Welcome to the MSDW podcast. I'm Jason Gumpert, editor at msdynamicsworld.com. On this episode, we have a discussion recorded live at the PANELS'23 event in Grand Rapids, Michigan, hosted by Cavallo. My guests are Robb Delprado and Steve Chinsky of Accelerynt. They are both Dynamics 365 Business Central and NAV ERP experts. Like me, they were at the event to get the latest updates on Cavallo's Business Central-focused product roadmap for distribution and order management solutions. We sat down to discuss some of the announcements from Cavallo, the future that Dynamics GP customers face in terms of the product's lifecycle and the decision to move to Business Central, and the evolution of Business Central as more ISVs like Cavallo, who have a history in the Dynamics GP space, enter the BC space with more comprehensive solutions. All right, well, I am here on site at the PANELS'23 event with Steve Chinsky and Robb Delprado. Can you guys maybe introduce yourselves a bit?
Sure, I'd love to. This is Steve Chinsky. I'm the director of the Dynamics practice at Accelerynt. Been in the Navision, NAV, BC space now for 24 years. I'm a Microsoft MVP, Community All-Star, Community Legend, overall past accountant or past bean counter, and loving this stuff for 24 plus years now and having a blast at it.
I'm Robb Delprado, and I have similar background as Steve. I've been in the NAV, Navision, BC space for 24 years. Steve and I actually worked together in 2001, went separate ways. Like Steve, I also have an accounting background. I've been on the user side as a controller, a COO, and president, and I'm on the partner side as a account manager, support, pre-sales, just about everything on this side of it. Even done some development work.
Well, great to have you both here. I've enjoyed seeing you both at this event. We're all recording this in Grand Rapids, Michigan, a place I don't know that well, but I'm starting to like. And it reminds me a little of, I live near Springfield, Massachusetts, and it reminds me a little of like a bigger Springfield to some degree, you know, not exactly, but I can sort of relate to it that way.
I can relate to the fact that the sidewalks around 6:30 here have rolled up, you know, and you're walking around looking for any stores open. We haven't found one like last night when we were walking around, so it was funny.
A little different for me because there's people actually walking around after 6 p.m. at night. I'm coming from Houston, Texas, where it's 101 degrees at 6 o'clock and everybody's indoors.
They've given up for the day?
They never went out.
Yeah. Well, I really wanted to use this as a chance to just chat maybe a bit about sort of how, not so much to review Cavallo's product announcements, you know, line by line, but to really talk a little bit about what you're seeing with how Cavallo sort of is lining up with some of Microsoft's strategy in the business applications space that you work in every day. I think there's some really interesting elements of the sort of life cycle of GP versus Business Central and progress there. So maybe we could start with that. I mean, to me, I think that's one of the most interesting sort of stories here is that Cavallo sort of finds himself, like some other, I would say, veteran, successful GP ISVs at sort of this inflection point that users might be on where not all of the GP users are thinking about Business Central right now, but they have one of the kind of the key stories, I would say, about what might come in the future for current GP customers in terms of weighing their options for Business Central, weighing their options for staying with GP. I think they're presenting one of the most cohesive stories there, I guess is what I'm trying to say. I don't know. Do you agree? Do you take anything away from that, Robb?
Well, first, Jason, I came here because I wanted to see the product. I've actually helped them make some changes to coordinate for one of my clients. And it's going to be rolled out at the end of Q3. So I came just to take a look at that. But what it did was it opened my eyes. I wasn't realizing that they actually have, as you said, a compelling story for people to stay on GP. I was thinking that, in a couple of years with the sunsetting of the product by Microsoft, that they were going to, force everybody to get over to BC. But this has opened up my eyes. They actually have people who are going to be dedicated to this product from the Cavallo side. And even if there aren't any more modifications for it from the Microsoft platform, Cavallo's still here. Cavallo's going to do that for the GP folks, but they also recognize that they have people that are going to go over to the BC side. And so they're able to play both sides of it and get the benefits from both. So I was really shocked, but I also shared with them a story, and it makes sense on why people are going to be able to stay on GP. I had a client call me up a couple of years ago, and I've shared this with the group. I said, they called me and said, hey, we want to upgrade. And I said, well, what version you on? And they said, we're still on 2.0, the version you brought us on in 1999. And I thought, well, if they can stay on Navision, from that long ago with all their virtual servers and meeting all the requirements for security services, certainly these GP people can stay on GP for a hell of a long time. So it isn't going to go away.
After Bob McAdams, he said, hey, come on and come to Cavallo here and see this for the first time. I was intrigued more from the aspect of the software, how it's been kind of like weighing heavily on me with different customers I've been meeting. But going back to your initial question, it's like the keynote alone where, the CEO came out and just said, if you want to stay on GP, stay on GP. It's not going anywhere. Granted, yes, they're not going to sell it net new at the end of 2026, but you have to believe at some point Microsoft will make some sort of end of life date somewhere in the future. At some point in life, they're not going to keep supporting this thing till they're blue in the face. The nice part is I like the fact that if you want to stay on GP, you can stay on GP for as long as you want. There are people to support you at Cavallo. There'll be people like us who support our GP customers, and they'll be out there. But being that we are, yes, Business Central BC pros, we would love to see people acclimate to that area. Got a beautiful, Bridge to the Cloud program to get great licensing. But for the most part, I love the fact that if you want to go there, the software, it is relatively smooth transitions. There's a couple of quirks, but that's because you're going from a GP world and how it operated to a BC world and how it is so feature rich and how you don't have to have all these extra bells and whistles because it's already built into the software. But it's really beautiful the way they're moving the product. They're going to, they're in the order entry space. They've got that pretty much set in motion. There's a couple of things I'd love to see in the future happen to them. And certainly, we're going to be talking to them to give them our advice based on being a BC expert. I love the fact that it's going to get into the manufacturing space. I've spoken to them, service. So all the features of Business Central, I was actually happily surprised. I was telling Robb last night, I said, I've never really gone to a conference. I think we both said this. We're not speakers here. We're actually plain old attendees. And I came away like a child in a candy store. I'm freakishly like, this is some kick-ass software for people who are in the distribution order entry space where they're constantly having to, need a screen that's going to give them a million answers in one spot. So I kind of loved it.
That's really interesting. A couple of thoughts from what you were both saying there. One was input I had from someone else that when it comes to companies thinking about Business Central, if they're on GP, and I've talked to GP customers while I've been here, and they are very comfortably on GP, as I think you both alluded to. That's certainly one segment. For the ones who are thinking about Business Central, one piece of advice I got from someone was, if you think you want to start a project in 3 years, you might be putting that goal at risk because as time marches on, the interest will grow in doing migrations. And if you feel like you really need it in 3 years, you might have a harder time finding a team that can actually take you through it because resources are not that abundant, right? In terms of people like you and your teams, they're not that huge that they haven't been adding talent as quickly as maybe the market might be demanding it. So it's a bit of optimistic thinking, maybe too optimistic. I don't know what you think, to think that those resources will be there for you to run a project when you want in 3 years.
I'm going to agree with you. Right now, it's a hard time to find the talent right now. You've got a pool there's a segment of us who've been in this community a really long time who are, I hate using the word aging out, over the next several years. There's the pool that have been there and they've got, 5, 6, 7 years experience and stuff like that. So it's pretty interesting. They're learning. They're experts. They're experts in whatever field or whatever they're doing. Then there's the newcomers. There are people who are out of college who maybe they didn't come from industry. Maybe they didn't come from accounting or operations. And they left college to do this thing called consulting, but they're not experts. So you're right. The talent pool is low. It's really hard. Everybody's saying, I need help. Some people outsource. Some people subcontract, as one would say. But, for us, if we need help, we have our pool of people that we turn to as well. We're just like the next guy down the street. I hate using that analogy, but I think in 3 years, it's going to be even tougher. I really think in 3 years that some of us who've been doing this for that 20 plus years, we are I want to say like we're 5 years. If you think about it, we're in that window, like your 3 year window where we might be retired or something like that, or might be out of it. And there might not be people enough to do the work. Who knows what the GP people are going to want to do, if they're going to want to go to BC or they're going to say, I'm going to go to do something else. So now we're really in trouble. And so if you're thinking about it, I'm not trying to push you to cross the bridge and just deal with it. I would rather you think now for 2024-ish, 2025 maybe, but think now and at least plan, maybe do some investigatory work, do your due diligence, and then kind of say, you know what, let's just bite the bullet and do it. That kind of thing. I'm more worried, like you said, in 3 years, when you finally said, shoot, I got to do this, you're shit out of bed. You can't do it.
So I'm going to play devil's advocate in thinking about this, and I can't believe I am. But having been at Directions and Directions EMEA, Microsoft is coming out with more and more of those assisted setups and making it easier for that integration. And they keep talking about having it less consultant dependent. I mean, yes, you don't know what you don't know, but there is going to be, I think, more assistance from Microsoft and an easier path for some of the folks who don't have that consulting experience that Steve and I have. So, it's a double-edged sword. Are there going to be as many people out there doing it? But are you going to need the expertise that's down the road? Back in the day, we didn't think about all the programming that was going to be out there that we now have at our hands. So maybe it will be easier down the road.
Boy, I would be very impressed because I've talked to 3 customers today, broadly speaking, one in agriculture, one in chemicals, and one in machine parts, basically. And boy, trying to imagine any of them doing a reimplementation on Business Central from GP without major assistance from experts it's very hard to imagine.
The one thing I could say about GP to BC, and I think I will never change my thoughts or my opinion on this, is that coming from GP, it's going to be simple in the sense that we will SQL out your tables in the proper table structures. We will let you cleanse your data, and then we'll then config package them into Business Central. There's no reason to feel like this is going to be a nightmare, a headache, or anything like that. So at least put some comfort in the notion that it is going to be easy. It's just a question of what do you do now in GP that you think BC can't find out about it, and then deal with it after. But at least give an opportunity to start.
That's one of the nice things about this PANELS'23. Cavallo has gone out and made an effort to show their customers that, yes, you can stay on GP. But at the same time, they're exposing these customers to BC, saying you do have an option, and it's not going to be a harsh one. And the more exposure they get, and Mike was asking me last night, what was the one thing I would do different in this conference? And that would be to show a little bit more of the BC interface. And that's going to get more and more people comfortable with what's coming down the road should they decide to go.
Yeah. Do you think that the Cavallo team, for example, maybe made a conscious decision not to spend too much time showing GP people this BC interface?
I think that might have been the first step, that this year it's about, but they did show that when you're in their environment, you can quickly get over to BC. And so next year, maybe it's, hey, you're in BC and we can quickly get you back to what you're familiar with.
And I can certainly understand that, being cautious about that. I think there have been plenty of examples in past years where Microsoft, for example, wouldn't read the room and would get too excited about Business Central, right? And really kind of annoyed GP-focused customers and partners. So I can understand that. Did you have something else to add?
And really, the only thing I was going to add on that is, and being the new guy on the street, and I hate using that analogy, but coming here and really seeing the product feature it for the first time in the BC platform, I was excited. Because obviously being around the product a long time, like I said, I wish I knew this was here for BC years ago because of that fact. But I do agree with Robb in the sense that, next year, I'm hoping that at the same time next year when Cavallo does its user conference, that, a user can go up there and show them how they went from a GP to a BC and how easy it was and stuff like that in the product, showing them, yes, I did upgrade or re-implement myself and how easy it was.
One of the things that you can tell me as experienced NAV and Business Central people, but the way that a company like Cavallo and others now are sort of bringing, I guess you would call it more substantial package solutions to Business Central projects or making them part of Business Central solutions, where I think in the past, especially with NAV, customizing was maybe the more preferred option, that is a bit of an adjustment for Business Central partners overall, if they come from a NAV background. Do you feel that, or do you think that's going to be one of the challenges?
I don't know if I'd call it a challenge. I don't know where maybe I'll think about how I want to answer that word, but I will answer the question this way. Yes, when you were doing Navision and NAV, it was customization. There were partners out there, ISV partners, that you can turn to for that EDI, maybe a shipping system. Somebody had something out there that they built. It was considered an ISV. All it was you bought, simple things, credit card processing or something out there. I think when Business Central was announced, there was a slew of ISVs that disappeared. They kind of went by the wayside. They closed shop because they did not want to convert to the whole new extension language and everything like that. But I also believe that it's something completely different because coming from, whether it be GP or coming from wherever you're coming from, whatever ERP system, BC is feature rich, and everything else that you need by industry or by functionality is an app. I mean, it really truly is like the analogy they did on the stage yesterday at the general session is open your phone, find an app. There's an app for that. And I love that fact. I love the fact that literally I can have a customer problem and say to myself, what's apps? Oh, great app, do it. Shipping, credit card, order entry management, mass order entry management, which is not out of the box in BC like Cavallo. That to me is a dream come true for my supply chain customers. So I think to answer your question is, it's kind of like there are partners who love the customization world and now despise the fact, I don't know if they despise it, maybe poor word, but love the fact that there's an app for that. But I think they lose revenue because they can't customize anymore.
Yeah. And that was part of what I was perhaps getting at, that it's not the way they've structured engagements even, or I don't know. Rob, what do you think?
Well, again, going back to the way Cavallo has done this, and it's going to be something that's beneficial to BC users down the road too, is how you can customize the Cavallo app and be able to put in custom fields and also work your workflows. I really like that workflow process. And as we, work with them to give them some ideas about how they can better feed the information into the BC pages, I think it's just going to be a stronger product. So they've got a real head start on it.
It's almost interesting to me how some of those dynamics of customized, build from scratch versus buy a package solutions almost flipped on its head, because now I think the resistance in the other direction might be, well, why don't I just automate my order entry with Power Automate and start from scratch? And you can apply that to other disciplines, not just order entry. So vendors like Cavallo have to now, in a sense, work against that sort of mindset and sort of be able to counter that, as opposed to why don't I just customize NAV or why don't I just customize GP? That's just beginning, I think, in terms of a new challenge for some of these vendors.
Well, I like how they've already developed and understand how they can create these new fields out there and put an extension out in Business Central. They've already started working on that. So, I look at, and I was concerned originally about, well, there's going to be power apps coming down the road. But if you've got something like Cavallo already built, what do you need the other stuff for? You've already got it sitting on top, and go with it from there.
Yeah, certainly.
I totally agree with where you're going with this, because with all the new things that are coming down the pipe with, I think, the power apps, with AI, and there's so many other things I can imagine, years from now, how does one stay ahead of the curve, or even be why should I even be doing this anymore when they might just beat me anyway, and I'll lose everything. They'll just say, I don't need you anymore. I'll just go over here. Ironically enough, I look at all of our great ISVs that are out there like Cavallo and others, and I sit there and say, there's just no way it's going to beat them. I just can't see it. Maybe, I don't want to say I'm being naive. I'm really just being logical in the sense that there are just some things in their software, in their ISV software, that cannot be done by something else. I'm not saying it can't be done. I'm sure it can. But I don't see somebody going to take the time and effort to build out a massive power app with that much functionality and features to do warehousing or to do shipping or to do Cavallo order management. It's just too much. And I just think that they've got a niche, and their niche is for that, again, distribution supply chain kind of customer. And it just works. I mean, and it works smoothly and cleanly. And all, for now, they'll just keep growing it because there's plenty of areas in the software they haven't even touched upon that other industries are going to want. So, I mean, I think it's going to be cool.
Yeah, before I forget, a couple of other areas where I've seen that kind of a threat or challenge come up. One is, even just, I think today, Microsoft announced enhancements to their field service mobile app, like their native one, which is obviously there's other vendors out there that offer specialized ones. Invoice management, Microsoft's been pushing Power Apps based, Power Platform based invoice recognition and automation for themselves. I'm sure there's other examples out there of places where, they have commerce capabilities, but maybe that's a little weaker in terms of competing with the vendors out there. But yeah, I think those things will continue to come up. And then with Power Apps, well, I could automate my order entry, if I needed to. So why would I need an order entry or order management specialist? I think those will continue to be.
They'll be there. Like you said, I mean, somebody will figure it out. I believe somebody will figure out a Power App, and for all we know, it'll be free or whatever it is, and Microsoft will do it. But when you take some of the things you said, like the OCR stuff, it's like, OCR has been around probably since 05, 06 with some of the older providers in the NAV space. And I don't see them kind of replacing it because of AP automation. And there's so many providers out there now. I just don't see them.
They're so refined.
And they're not going to leapfrog, because to me, the OCR, the engine of the OCR, is what makes a good provider. It's not the rest of it. It actually is the OCR. Can you read something clearly? And there are good people out there, then they're just okay. I mean, I see other things like, they tried credit card processing. We know that. They all tried it back in 2016, 2017 NAV. They tried to get into credit card processing. They did it. They had the PCI in there and everything, and it just failed. It wasn't for them. Let somebody else deal with it. I think in the BC space, for me, I think they understand that we will do what we do best. We will let you guys do what you do best. We will try not to interfere. Yes, there might be some things that cross maybe they make better power workflows. Well, okay, yes, there are people who have workflows. They'll have to deal with that. But I think for now, they understand that there's a hard relationship between their ISVs and BC, and they're going to keep it that way.
And if you're already using Cavallo and you've learned how to use it, you've developed your own workflows, you're not going to want to switch down the road. I mean, that's the other thing. One of the things people say about why they're going to stay on GP is because, well, it just works. Well, if you're just working in BC with this Cavallo application, why would you switch to just because Microsoft comes out with something else? It's working fine for me the way it is. Why would I want to change?
I'll just throw this out there. Of the 3 customers, they're all GP customers that use Cavallo Sales Pad. I think of those 3 today, 1 had heard of Power Platform and had investigated Power BI and is not using it. And the others didn't actually really know what it was. That did surprise me a little bit, but it's just a reminder. I mean, when you're people like us who are paying very close attention on a regular basis, it's easy to lose track of that.
So the other thing about the Cavallo app is that the user, the person using the functionality, can actually understand what those workflows are, as opposed to you have to have somebody who understands the Power App and how that's going to work and put together those different workflows. Again, Cavallo is a very simple process to work with. Very impressed.
Before I forget, I do want to mention that you two are 2/3 of another podcast. Could maybe mention that and tell our listeners what it's all about?
Oh, sure. Myself, Robb, who's on this podcast here, and our friend Kim Dallefeld. Several months ago, we came up with a podcast that we do on YouTube. It's called BC3 Amigos. We get together once a month and we just pick a subject in the BC space, whether it be, functionality driven. It could be just a general topic about how to do something or what would we do if we're in this situation. And we just talk about it for about 40 minutes, 45 minutes. And we publish it out there. It's on YouTube. You can find us and subscribe to us. But we really, we take suggestions, friends, and we'll say, hey, talk about this, talk about that. But we love it. We think it's something that the community needs. It's free flowing. It's no filter. We just speak about it. Yes, every now and then it's a bleep, that kind of thing. But it happens, but we just let it go. And there's nothing too bad, but we have fun with it.
All right, excellent. Any other impressions of from this week? Any that you want to share before we sign off here?
I think my one impression is I was more blown away from the notion that, from here being such a heavy GP customer base, for Cavallo, the fact that, there are people here who are not going to leave their software. I mean, there was one gentleman at a lunch, he was just talking about it at the table, and he just said, I have no intention of ever getting off GP, regardless of how long I'll be here till I die. And that's a big thing for people from BC who've only heard, they're coming, that kind of, the GP people are coming, but they're not coming in droves. I mean, there's got to be a reason. And I think the reason is they have a home to stay in and they can be there for as long as they want to live in that home. So that was pleasantly surprised with the notion that, the order entry management that Cavallo was offering for me from the BC side is something that I wish was, yes. Do I wish it was in the software? Hell yeah. But from that aspect of it, I was actually shocked. The software's it's got a lot of features that my customers in supply chain really need today.
As a very long time passionate Navision, NAV, BC individual, I appreciate our community But having been exposed to this community here through Cavallo and the GP world, I'm impressed with their commitment and their passion for their product too. And I can understand why they don't want to leave. We welcome them over to our side, but if you want to stay there, we'll encourage you to enjoy what you got.
I like the sentiment. Well, thanks to both of you for chatting with me here. A lot of fun. It's been good being able to just see you and chat with you at the event too. I agree. It's been a fun get together. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jason.
This has been another episode of the MSTW podcast. My thanks once again to Robb and Steve for joining me. Robb and Steve also host the BC3 Amigos podcast on YouTube with Kim Dollefeld. We will post a link to that in the show notes. You can also see the rest of our coverage of Business Central News and the Cavallo PANELS'23 event on our site. And that's it for this episode. If you want to get in touch with me, you can send me an email, jgumpert@msdynamicsworld.com. For all of our updates, please do follow us on LinkedIn. Until next time, this is MS Dynamics World, signing off.